So, hello students, I am continuing my video about watercolors. So I guess this is watercolor part 2 to show you a few more things that hopefully will help you be able to use watercolors more effectively. So I picked up a couple of leaves here from my daughter's yard, and I'm going to use them. Now, a lot of times I like to sit and draw the edges of the leaves for the sake of hurrying a bit, or if you just feel like you can't draw it, you could lay it down and actually trace this leaf. So I'm going to do that. Hopefully you can see my pencil marks. I'm just tracing it lightly because I don't really want it to be outlined in my finished product. I just need something so that I can know where my paint's going. So don't press too hard. Remember to kind of back up from your pencil a little bit so that you make the lines, but you don't make them too heavy. And then I'm going to stop there and make the stem. I'll just draw the stem. And that's probably all I'll really do to it right now, because first thing I'm going to do is add some color. So the easy way to do that, because I'm not particularly crazy about all the colors on this leaf. I'd like to have it have a little more color, maybe some reds and even some greens. So the first thing I'm going to do is lay down just water on it. Now I don't want it to be puddling and thick. I'm going to kind of spread it out, but I'm going to try to get it around the edges carefully. So you might want to use whatever brush is comfortable for you. If you're doing a larger area, this flat brush might be better. If you're doing a small area or you just don't feel like you can handle the big brush, use a smaller one. And we're just going to get that area wet so we can do a wet on wet technique, which just means we're going to put wet watercolor into this wet surface area. All right, so I'm going to let that kind of sit there a second, kind of soak in the paper just a little bit. Grab a couple tissues, so I have those to work with if I need them. It's good to keep a couple tissues handy. If you get a little puddle that you don't like or the paint gets too dark, you can easily fix it. All right, so it doesn't look like it, but I did wash this out, so I'm just going to put some color out here. Ooh, I did wash it. If it looks too dirty, use our palette, which washes off pretty easily. And I think I will put kind of a yellow wash of color on this because it's the lightest, and all my colors that I think I'm going to add to my leaf could cover it. So I think I'll start with some yellow. Now, again, this is a wet on wet technique, so we're putting wet watercolor in, so you can see it starts to spread, kind of floats out. You can go as far as you want with it. Watch your puddles if you start to see that it's puddling somewhere. And like I said, I can kind of wash yellow all over it because all my colors will work with the yellow. But maybe on this side I'll let it up a little because I think I'd like to have this side of my leaf be a little redder. And if I put the yellow on there, I'm going to get some orange going on. So I'm going to turn this. Hopefully you can still see it. And I'm just going to let my red kind of float in there, because the leaves, they just kind of turn how they want. They don't have to have a particular pattern on them. I'm going to go down here and paint this little curled edge. Be careful close to my edges. Now you can see that I'm sort of getting some orange there where the yellow and the red are crossing up. I can make that a little more prominent by just adding some more yellow possibly. Spreading it around a little bit. And then maybe I'll put some orange actually in it. But kind of be careful when you put wet on to a wet area. If you get too much going on, you may have some puddles that you don't like. But some of this will be really pretty. And it'll kind of make it look more realistic, like a real leaf. Okay, I like that. I think I'm going to kind of let that set. Now I have, if you see right there, there's a little puddle of orange that's kind of, might take a little while to dry. I'm just going to touch my tissue to it there just to get a little bit off of it. And I'll let it sit here till it's not shiny, which will mean it's dry. While that's waiting, and I'll come back to that, I'm going to show you how to paint white objects with watercolor. Obviously you don't have white watercolor because white watercolor wouldn't be see-through, wouldn't be transparent. There is white watercolor and we do use it sometimes for certain things, but for the most part people paint around the areas that they want to remain white. So you have to do some planning when you're doing watercolor. So I'm going to sketch a little scene here with a sailboat. Put another little sail out here on it, billowing out kind of. This is going to be my horizon line in the background. So that will be the sky. The water will be below it. And I want a little boat there that I'll probably make into a different color to show off. Okay. Now to do my sky, I would do, it's a good idea to do your background first on some things. So on this one, what I'm going to do is take some water, which is getting a little dirty, but I think it'll work okay for this. You want to change your water frequently with watercolor. And I'm going to paint water onto this whole area with a little speck of red in my brush there, so be careful that you are cleaning your brushes well. And don't let your brushes lay in the water. That ruins them because some of them have glue in the ferrule and water will loosen that. Okay, so I have everything wet, like right up to the edges of the sail and around it. And what I'm going to do is make a blue cloudy sky. So I will take my little bit of the blue here. Now remember that watercolor tends to dry a little bit lighter than what you put it on. So you may want to make it a little darker than what you think it should be. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to paint along my horizon line. And I'm going to leave some places where the clouds are so that I can have like soft, billowing, realistic looking clouds. One up there, and maybe we'll have one down in this corner too. So some big, pretty cloudy day clouds. As long as you keep that wet, as long as it's wet, your clouds will have soft edges. Now again, if you see a spot that you think is, collecting a little too much paint, or your clouds were getting too small or something, or I got a little blue coming into my cloud here, I can take the tissue and just kind of lightly tap it out where I want to lift that while it's still wet. So, okay, so I'm going to come back to this. I'll let this dry a bit. And while I'm showing you that, I'm going to show you kind of how you could do like a little sunset snow scene. We'll do a little sunset snow scene down here. So for this one, I'm going to paint some pine trees in it so it looks like winter. So here's going to be my horizon line. Horizon is where the sky meets the ground, or in this case, the water. And up above that, I'm just going to paint that whole area with water first because I'm going to go for a blended sunset sky. So if you want things to blend, you want wet. If you don't want them to blend, you want it to be dry. Remember that. Okay, so I'm going to start up at the top with some blue, maybe a little black in it, just to make it really dark. We'll see how that goes. Now it's probably going to lighten up a bit because of my water on there. So, ooh, look at that. It's bleeding down nicely there. I kind of got up here where my water is going to be in my boat scene, but like I said, this is just playing around, an example. All right, I'm going to put a little purple into this for the next bit that I do. Oh, I got blue instead of purple. That purple never looks like purple to me. It always looks darker. Okay, so let's just go ahead and blend some of that in. I like how it's kind of fuzzing down. And then I will go to red. If you keep it in color wheel order, everything will blend nicely and you won't get any weird brown sky or anything going on in there. Because if you get yellow and purple next to each other, you're going to have some weird stuff going on. Maybe it's a nice sunset pink like we've had here recently, or maybe it's a sunrise. Okay, I'm going to come down here with a little bit of orange. It doesn't even have to be dark, it just could be a little bit of orange melting into my reds here. And I'll finish off with some yellow for that sun that's going down or coming up or whatever it's doing. Now I'm getting a little bit of a puddle here. You can even just touch the tissue on it lightly and it'll kind of blot it up without really putting it down too hard. I think I might go up there and try to put in a little more blue, but we'll see. It may. We don't want hard edges in our sky. We want them to blend. So you want it. You have to do it while it's still wet. Okay, I've got a big blob of water over here. I'm not sure what I'm doing there, but you can dry it up quite a bit. Now I might even sneak in a couple little clouds down here with my purpley blues. Just barely touch those on and just give it a couple places where, watch out if you get in your yellow, you might have green clouds. But that's okay too. Okay, so we got some sunset going on there. I like it. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to go back to my leaf while it's drying, and then we'll come back to the sailboat. So with our leaf then, we've got some colors on there we like. I think I'm going to add some little spots of green, maybe like a really bright green, like a yellow green. Hope you can see that. Yep, looks like maybe you can. It's hard to make these videos and make sure everybody can see what's going on. So while it's still a little wet some places, I'm just going to drop some greens in there too, because I saw some leaves that I picked up that had like little green places that hadn't completely turned other colors. And maybe there a little bit, just random. And while I'm here, I'm going to paint the stem, kind of a dark brown, maybe a little black in it, just to really darken it. And use the little brush or use the tip of a little bit bigger brush. That's what I'm doing here. Now, when I get up here close, it may bleed in. It's okay, I guess. All right, so I'm going to let that dry. I'll come back to that. And right now I'm going to do my water. I think my sky has dried enough along the edge that I can go in and put in some water. So instead of just making blue water, I'm going to kind of go blue-green with my water so that it looks different than the sky. Maybe it looks like Indian Lake a little bit or something. Maybe I'll steal a little of that and see what happens. It's fun to mix colors. All right, so again, before I do that, it would probably be a good thing to just float some water in there where I'm going to put some water where I'm going to put my water. And if my sky hadn't, I kind of got crowded here, but it's okay. You would probably only be painting one picture on a page. Okay, so I've got water on there, and you can probably see it because my water has now turned kind of a light blue. And I'm going to do kind of a blue-green water, so we'll see how this looks. And we're going to go in. I'm going to use my little brush. If I use that brush, I'll end up getting into something I shouldn't. Size your brush for what you're painting. Make sure that you can get into the places you need to be. If it's small, you want a smaller brush. If it's a bigger area, then you want a bigger brush, because you don't want to waste a lot of time streaking it with a little brush if you're painting a big area, and it'll cause a lot of streaking. Okay. All right, I think I'll put some more darker places in there just to make it a little more interesting looking. Maybe we'll throw some purple in there and see what happens. While it's wet, I can just kind of streak it in there. Put in some waves. If you wanted to have white caps on your waves, you could save some places, not paint them. But this is kind of little for me to do that in. Now if I wanted my waves to be more precise, and I could go back here in a bit and add a few more that once that's dried a little bit. Okay. All right, so now we're waiting on paint to dry. I'm going to go ahead and kind of blot this edge a little bit so that maybe we can go ahead with our snow scene down here. So to have snow, obviously for snow you would leave the paper white, but when the sun is on snow banks, you will see like shadows that are blues or purples sometimes. So I'm going to just make a couple little shadows, kind of bluish. Maybe where there's a snowdrift or something. Look at the snow when it starts, hopefully not too soon. And I'll just soften that up a little bit. Maybe put a little, if there was a tree, there might be a little shadow of a tree falling from somewhere. It wouldn't be falling this way though, it would be coming towards us. Okay, so let's let that, okay, so if you wish to do a bigger watercolor, you may want to find a piece of cardboard or a flat board and take some masking tape and tape the edges down, because that'll kind of keep your paper flatter, and it'll stretch back to flat as it dries. And then don't take the tape off until it dries. Okay, so I'm going to go back here in my boat real quick and put in a little bit of more detailed waves. And just get some texture going in my water there. So kind of like that. So that way it's dry. Now I can actually kind of draw with the brush. And that's called dry brush. Now my sails are going to stay white, but they might need a little shading in them. I'll use a little bit of black and probably some blue, because I don't want it to just be black, to put in the shadows of the sails a little bit there. Just the little details that make it kind of real. And I'm going to paint my boat red, just for the fun of it. But this only works because I've let the water dry. And I didn't let that dry, so it's blending up into that a bit, but I guess that'll be okay. And probably blot it a little bit. And I may come back and do a little more detail on my boat. So for my leaf, I'm going to put some darker veins into it. So for this, I suggest you really look at the veins in your leaf and decide where they go. And you may want to use a very small brush, or like I said, the tip of a, trying to find the little one, the tip of the bigger brush. Like, don't press down all the way. And I'm going to do some kind of brown veins in here. And I look at where the main veins go. They start at the stem and go way out to the tip of the leaf. Now, you don't want them real dark and real thick. They won't look realistic that way. So let's put one here. And one comes out from there to this end of the point, and then one goes out. I'm going to turn it around so I can paint it better if I'm pulling the brush towards me for these details. Just like with the tree on the other video, I think that I showed you. Okay, so now I have the main veins, then a lot of little veins come off of those. So I just, like I said, make them really delicate so they look like a real leaf. You can put lots of them in there. I'm not going to take time to put them all, but I'm going to try to make it. See how much that adds to your leaf and makes it look realistic. Don't be afraid to turn your paper the way you need it to be so that you can work on what you're doing and do a good job. And I'm almost done with that. So that's how you can add detail to anything, by just letting things dry, being patient, or speeding it up like I did with the hairdryer. All right, so down here I want to do some pine trees. So I'm going to use a little bit bigger brush. Here it is. And I'm going to mix up a moderate green first. Let's get some green going. But I don't want it to be bright green. It's nighttime, the pine trees. And maybe I'll add some little brown to it, or maybe blue. Maybe they're blue spruces. Yeah, like that color. And I'm going to get a darker color eventually too. So to do pine trees, I mark where I'm going to plant them. I'm going to plant one right in this snowdrift. And I'm going to make it tall. It's going to be close to us, so it's going to come way up in the sky. That's my little guideline for the center of my pine tree. Now, a lot of people take a pine tree and they do this. That's fine, but it doesn't really look like a real pine tree. So I'm going to try to show you a way where you can make yours look more realistic. So I just get some paint on my brush, and I'm start with the top because that's, where you would put the star if you were making a Christmas tree. Now, I'm just going to dab my brush a little bit back and forth. Now, notice I'm not going way out. I want this tree to be about this wide at the bottom. So I'm going to give myself a little mark to shoot for and not go out faster. And I'm just, or farther. And I'm just blotting my brush back and forth if I feel like I need a little more paint. And I'm trying to make sure that stem doesn't show, because that was just like a guideline for me for the trunk. Make some branches stick out a little bit. And then make it sweep clear down to the ground. You don't really, a lot of times you don't even see the bottom of the trunk of the pine tree. And there's a lot of snow, so it might be covering up a lot of it. You could put a little bottom there if you wanted to. Like I said, it's yours. And like Bob Ross says, happy little trees, right? Okay, so I have this green. What I can do is make that a little darker green, and be careful when putting black in, because you can see what I just did. I made it all black. I want a dark green, not a totally black. And to make this look a little more real, I can go in and kind of put some shadows around under some of the branches to make it look like it has some depth. It's not just a flat pine tree. Make them random. Don't try to like do a pattern, just look where you have a little branch sticking out and maybe make a little something underneath it. Okay, and so you could make more pine trees. I'll do one more that's going to be a little darker and a little farther away on the, let's put one back here. It's going to be farther away, so it's going to be shorter, and it's going to start up higher on our page. Again, I'm just going back and forth a little bit. I'm letting the brush make those shapes for me, because it would be kind of silhouetted since the sun is setting in our picture here. Okay, and then you could add another kind. You could add a regular deciduous tree. That's what they're called, the ones that lose their leaves in the fall. As long as your sky's dry, you're able to paint right up over top of it and add your tree with bare branches, which would look really wintry and snowy, cold. So, and I would just continue to add lots of little branches, again, using the tip of the brush to make those little narrow places. So I'd probably need more branches, but I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go back to my boat. I'm not sure that the boat is dry, but I would probably go in and do a little detail on it, like make the inside of the boat look a little darker so that it looks like it's a three-dimensional. And then I might go in and put some lines on it for the wood. And I think I drew a little flag up there at the top, a little streamer. So once my skies, I'm shaking today, and I got my hand in my other watercolor, I can just go in there and make a little streamer out, blowing. Kind of gives me the feel that the wind is blowing in my picture. So there are some things you can try. You can also go online and find videos where maybe beginner watercolor video where somebody's painting something and you can paint along with them. Good luck. I'd like to see what you can do at the end of the period. Show me what you have done in the media album. Have a great day. Bye.